So one thing that I struggle with is existential dread or existential anxiety. And usually what that means is, I'll be in the middle of living my life, doing some kind of menial task at the kitchen sink, washing dishes, and I will just, out of nowhere, get this intrusive thought that tells me none of this matters. And very soon, none of this will matter. And certainly it won't matter that you're washing the dishes right now.
Hello, Danielle.
Hi, Jeff.
You're back.
I'm back.
Yay. We got good feedback from the last episode
Oh, good.
that you're on, so I'm glad that you came back. Before we get started, can you introduce yourself to everyone so they can find out more about you and where to find you?
Sure. My name is Danielle LaSusa, and I am a philosophical coach helping moms grapple with what it means to make a human person. And I help people think through their lives and live with purpose and wisdom and clarity.
That's great.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a group that you run for moms?
I do. Yeah. I've just launched a new group coaching program for moms, and I'm really excited about it. It's a way to bring, I think motherhood can be really lonely, and it's a way to bring women together who don't always feel like they can connect with other moms on the playground, especially if they want to talk about big, deep philosophical things that motherhood brings up for us, like how it makes you think about death all the time and, all that sort of fun stuff. It's not really like playground material
right.
for most people. So you can come talk about that with me.
Mm-hmm. I love it. We'll link in the show notes to your group and to your newsletter and everything like that.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay. So today we're going to get real depressed. Is that, or maybe not?
I mean, we could go there. I think it's part of the journey. You got to go through the valley to come out the other side.
It's so true. Okay. Well, before we get going, we're going to play this listener question. And then we're going to talk about it.
Cool.
Here we go.
So one thing that I struggle with is existential dread or existential anxiety. Every couple of months or so, I'll just be hit with a wave of it, and it'll last for a couple of weeks, couple of months. And usually what that means is, I'll be in the middle of living my life, doing some kind of menial task at the kitchen sink, washing dishes, and I will just, from out of nowhere, get this intrusive thought that is true and tells me none of this matters. Nothing that you're doing right now, nothing that you're doing in your life is going to matter 100 years from now. All the people you love, all the people you're trying to impact, all the people that you care about are going also to die. And very soon, none of this will matter. And certainly it won't matter that you're washing the dishes right now. But it also won't matter that you had these grand purposes in your life and that you had this career arc and that you had all of these plans and dreams, and it's all the same as washing the dishes. And it will just make me so blue and so sad because I don't want to be a nihilistic person. I don't want to crawl under the covers and say, fuck this. I want to live vibrantly and, help and experience joy and give joy. And I don't know how to square those two things, because when that comes up and that voice in my head is telling me that it doesn't matter and there is no inherent meaning, I know also that it's right. So how do I continue to live if my intrusive thoughts are telling me the truth?
I feel like that I like that ending. I like the whole question, but the ending of what do I do with my intrusive thoughts if they're true?
Yeah.
That feels spooky.
It does. The calls coming from inside the house.
Exactly. And I think that's sort of a lot of times that's the fear of these intrusive thoughts, or, they maybe are coming from my critical self, or they're messages that I've picked up from society or family or whatever. And the ones that she's grappling with of like, what is the meaning of anything? It does feel like, in a way, I mean, is that true? Would you agree that those thoughts are true?
I mean, I guess it sort of depends on what you mean by it doesn't matter, you know? Like, I mean, in a way, yeah. Like, there is no inherent meaning, I think. I mean, different people come to us with different ideas, right? Some people think that, like, there is a God that gives us has a whole system that's laid out for us and has our lives have a strong sense of meaning and purpose, and they matter in a system that makes sense. But I think for a lot of people, if you don't have that, then you're just like, well, here we are, and we're going to come up with stuff to do, I guess, while we're here, and we're going to really believe in it. But the whole system is actually just kind of made up, and eventually, you know, the sun's going to explode and no one's going to remember your name. So in a way, yeah, it's true.
Maybe, but maybe that's not true.
Yeah.
Maybe things are being recorded in some spiritual bookstore. What is that? The Akashic Records? Do you know about the Akashic Records?
It's sort of ringing a bell, but not really.
That's like if you go to Spirit World and hang a left or whatever, you like get to the Akashic Records.
Okay.
And that is where, I mean, I might be oversimplifying this. I'm sure I am. But that's where like your whole life is, and all these like records and all these books, and you can go hang out there and read about every little detail. No, you've never heard of this? Why?
Yeah.
Oh, it's fun. It's like you get bored. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why. But you can like talk to like psychics and mediums that can visit your Akashic records and tell you what your life is about and what the meaning, what the purpose of it and everything. So problem solved. That's the end of the episode. She needs to go get her Akashic records read.
Yeah. Well, then there's really nothing more to say.
Yeah.
If one believes in Akashic records.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, certainly the premise, the idea that none of this matters comes with a certain kind of metaphysical view of the world, right? Of how the world is and how reality is, and has a kind of maybe there's implicit in it a lack of spiritual structure that gives it an overt meaning. But I think it's that even if we start from that place, it doesn't mean that we have to fall into the deep despair of depression. You know?
I mean, it quickly lends to that, possibly, maybe depending on the type of person you are and your psychology and everything. Like if nothing means anything, then everything feels meaningless. And what the fuck are we doing here? Why am I washing these dishes? Or trying to, like, might as well just become a capitalist and try to get all the money. Yeah. And then
eat, drink, and be merry.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's certainly one kind of response, you know. But I'm thinking this question, I think the premise of it makes me think a lot about the work of Jean-Paul Sartre, who, the French philosopher. And he basically said, like, we are born without a purpose. Like, that's just sort of his starting place. Like, we're born without a purpose. We just show up. And then it's up to us to determine the meaning of our lives. And that, in fact, is our human condition, is that, like, we don't have any other person or being that's going to determine that meaning for us. It's our responsibility and our freedom. And that can be really scary for people. He says it causes anguish. His like a famous quote is, "We are condemned to be free." Wow. Because we can't escape the fact that we have to be the ones to decide what our lives mean.
What are his like top 10 tips on finding meaning?
Yeah.
Or is he just like, yeah.
Well, he's a philosopher, so it's just like, this is how it is, folks. Right. Good luck.
Yeah.
No, but he was a pretty hopeful person, Sartre was, I think. Or at least he acted as though he was hopeful. He was he was a Marxist, actually, and like really wrote in defense of Algeria and the French-Algerian War in the 50s, and did a lot of activist work. And he said, like, I don't know that any of this is going to amount to anything, but what else are we going to do here? Like, here we are. You yeah, it's true that there is no meaning, but that gives us freedom to kind of do whatever our view of the world tells us is important. And after that, like, it's not up to us,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Did he have kids?
No,
yeah.
he didn't.
Uh-huh.
I know. And I do think that, like, having kids in a way makes this question even more urgent,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, what kind of world are you going to leave for your kids? And what are they doing here? Why are they here? Why are you here? The whole thing. It's complicated.
Because, I mean, yeah, your boy Sartre sounds like, it sounds liberating and interesting and engaging in curiosity, and how maybe exciting that you get to be the one to define what the meaning is and what's important to you.
Mm-hmm.
It also sounds like that probably comes with a lot of privilege, like if you actually could, right? You know, and I mean, we all maybe have that power to a certain degree, I would imagine.
Yeah. But I mean, he over the course of his career, when he first started, he was like, no, anyone has all the freedom. We all have this is the same amount of freedom. Even a prisoner is free to,
right.
Not try and get beyond his bars, right? Like, you can make the decision about whether or not you are in prison depending on what you want. Mm-hmm. Which, like, I mean, okay, it's a little bit of a stretch, dude. And over time, he was like, oh, and also there may be systems of oppression that have an influence over how we think and the choices that are available to us. Mm-hmm. But given that, I mean, it's true that we live in a world where there are systems that push on us and limit what feel like live choices to us. But even within that, I think we have a lot more freedom than we think we do. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so, if you can think of it in a way of like, we have freedom, I can access that at the very least inside of my own mind, then endless possibilities.
Yeah.
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 Uh-huh. And if that can be like an exciting thing to grab onto, then I guess go with that, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's so much of us, like, implicit, I think, in this caller's question is this desire of, like, someone just tell me what this all means. Like, someone give me the answer. And I think that's a lot of what we want. And that's a lot of what Sartre said we want, is that we just, like, I just want someone to tell me what to do. And I want them to tell me that it'll be meaningful in a certain way. And I want them to be right. Mm-hmm. Right? I want them to, like, have the real power of conferring meaning on what I do. Mm-hmm. And the truth is that we don't have that thing unless we decide to put our faith in the Akashic records or Christianity mm-hmm. or whatever else. And then we say, like, oh yes, this is the answer. And then we get really attached to that system. Right. And then of course people, their whole sense of self, their sense of identity, their sense of meaning is connected to that system. And then they, like, fight each other over it. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. so that's, I think, how we end up in a lot of the trouble that we're in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny that this caller is calling in and talking about, like, washing the dishes. Didn't somebody say that you can wash the dishes in order to mm-hmm. get them clean, or you can just wash the dishes to wash the dishes? Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. That's a Thich Nhat Hanh, Vietnamese priest.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Buddhist priest. Mm-hmm. Or monk, I should say.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Which I'll, like, think about that every now and then. Typically when I'm washing the dishes, because usually I'm washing it to get them clean and get the fuck on with my life.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of, like, freedom in that when you're just sort of, like, being as mindful as you possibly can, doing the mundane or not doing the mundane, but just sort of, like, being present in the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think so much of our questions about meaning are questions about, like, what story am I telling about my life, mm-hmm. right? And about my role in the world, and, like, how do I look at the things that have happened to me and the things that I've done and the things that I'm going to do, and I tell this, like, coherent tale about it all. And what I think that kind of Buddhist approach is, like, or the mindful approach is, maybe take a pause from telling yourself a story about everything and about yourself and even about the dishes and, like, what you're doing in the process, and just allow yourself to receive the sensory information of washing the dishes. Like, it's warm, it's wet, it's smooth, it has a certain fragrance. It, you know, is a very tactile experience. It doesn't actually have to be part of a whole story, you know? And that is a way of giving ourselves a break, I think, from that constant questioning of like, what is this all adding up to? You know? Because I think like whatever answer we come up with, like what is it all adding up to? It's all made up. Like our answer is ours, and we've just decided that that's what it means. And it could be like, well, I'm washing these dishes so that I can go do my work. I don't know, breakfast dishes. And I'm going to go do my work, and then I'm going to go write my book, and then the book is going to sell, and then I'm going to be able to like be this person out in the world. And so in that case, the dishes are just an impediment to my goals and to my story, and you just want to be done with them and get on with your day. But all of that stuff is just a story in your head, right? Like you're always just right where you are, always dealing with the things right in front of you. When you're off writing the book, it's just like you and a laptop and some ideas, and the rest of it is also made up. So, I mean...
It seems like do you feel like you've found some peace in the whole what does everything mean question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, certainly I have moments of like, you know, it's scary, right? Like, because you have a whole world that you've built. And I've definitely in the past had whole worldviews that have fallen apart underneath me. You know, I was raised evangelical, and then I went to college and became a heathen and studied philosophy, and suddenly that whole system crumbled underneath me, and with it went my ability to use that system as part of my storytelling for what the meaning of my life was about. Right. And so it was like very destabilizing, not only because I feel like I didn't have that, you know, like idea of God to lead on anymore, but also because I didn't know what my life was supposed to be about, you know? And so I've had a couple of those kinds of things happen. And I think in the end, to me, it feels like there is a kind of, there's like a duality about it where you have to both believe in the story that you're telling and at the same time know that it's all made up and none of it actually means anything or matters. You know?
But it matters to your mental health.
Yeah.
It matters to your everyday psyche.
You have to be able to function, right?
Yes.
Like everyone should have projects, right? Like this caller is like, what do I do about my projects and this, you know, these things that I'm trying to do? And it's like, well, yeah, have projects. Projects are great. They give us something to do, and they give us a story to tell, and they, you know, impact the world, or we can at least tell a story about how we impact the world. And we're human beings, and we're creators, and that includes creators of our own life stories. And I don't think there's anything bad about any of that. But I do think that when we are able to see that all with a little bit of distance and levity, we feel freer. We feel freer because we know that, like, it's like the life is one big like soccer game where it's like, okay, we've all agreed on the rules and the boundaries, and there's this ball and you can't touch it with your hands. And it's all like arbitrary rules, right? Yeah. Like you got to get it in this little square and these are the positions and you can't go past this line. And none of that is like real, right? But people play it with a lot of enthusiasm, right? And like are really committed to the outcome and try their hardest and like achieve amazing human feats while doing it. And all of that is wonderful. But at the same time, if we actually like believe that the soccer game is metaphysically like important in some way or another, like we're deluded. We are. What, you don't think so? I mean,
I'm thinking about one of my earlier episodes for my other podcast, Big Dating Energy. I talked to my favorite / current psychic and medium.
Nice.
And a lot of the conversation was about what does it all mean?
Yeah.
And she was just like, oh, I'll tell you exactly what it fucking means.
Yeah, I'm sure she had lots of answers for you.
Oh, yeah. She had an answer for every single question. That one episode was with Emily Dexter, so you all can go try to find that if you want. But so it feels very like, so when I was talking to Emily, and Emily also is like, her metaphysical view matches my either my metaphysical view or what I want my metaphysical view to be. So it's just like a great her validating me the whole time conversation, which is my favorite kind of conversation, honestly. And then I left that conversation feeling like I'm right. Everything makes sense. Even if I don't understand exactly what's going on, I'm supposed to have experiences and I'm supposed to feel what it's like to be uncomfortable. And even if I don't know exactly what the meaning is for today or for this year or my whole life, I do have 3 like wonderful, beautiful spirit guides that are following me around, and I might be lost, but they know how to communicate with me.
Yeah.
Even being like a dummy here on earth, they're always taking care of me and putting things in front of me and making sure I meet the right people. And then when I'm done and dead, I get to like hang out with them and look back on the, you know, my life, which is a wonderful, the first thing that you do, or like the second thing that you do when you die, is you have a life review.
Oh.
Like you go through that book that's going to be put in the Akashic records and you're like, what happened? and you go through it in a very, with like one of your favorite spirit guides, and you go through it in a very non-judgmental, curious, open kind of way where you experience your big emotions and feelings for their life, and you experience other people that you touched and how they felt. So it's all very scripted, and this is what happens. And then you spend time in spirit world and you may or may not come back down. And I hope I don't come back, you know, like there's a whole, and that just feels so sweet. Yet I know that I'm like, even though I believe in that, I can only believe in that 99% because I'm not dead yet. So we'll find out when I die. Yeah. But kind of like you're saying, like, why would I not choose to believe in that when it's so comfy and sweet and meaningful?
Yeah.
And so that's what the caller should do, is listen to that episode and believe what I believe.
Problem solved.
Problem solved again.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe you're right. Maybe Emily Dexter is right, and I've got it all wrong. And there's that whole thing will happen. And like,
well, that's the thing, is that like I think Emily is right, because it's not just Emily and me. It's like many hundreds, thousands, millions of people who, whatever, they're like psychics, have the same sort of views, near-death experiences. Little kids, when they're 3-year-old and you ask them their past lives, they remember it. Like there's all these, like, if you read all the books about all the metaphysical, spiritual stuff, they all kind of say the same bullshit. Not like religion, but religion has their own stories, but like spirituality and like the sort of new age woo spirituality, it feels so good.
Well, right. But of course, Christians would say the same thing. You read all of these different stories from all of these different Christians, and there are millions of Christians around the world that believe what they believe. And the Muslims say the same thing, and the Zoroastrians say the same thing, and, whatever. Like, right. I think that we all believe that we are right. And
I can't wait to find out, though.
Yeah.
Like, one of us is probably more right than anyone else.
I mean, maybe. I don't know.
There's probably someone's more right?
I mean, unless like our human minds can't even like, comprehend what the beyond is. And so we're like all just looking in the wrong direction, all like completely. I don't know, You're
trying to fuck with me. I don't like this.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't know. I come to this question, from that kind of existentialist point of view of saying like, and maybe it's sort of because we don't know which of these groups is right, and that they all say that they are right, and a lot of them have like fundamentally conflicting perspectives on what reality is like. So I think that one way of dealing with that issue is to say like, let's just suspend all of it and assume that nobody actually is right, and assume that none of it actually has any, you know, no one can own the truth here in that way. And so then what?
Yeah, but then so then why not just like do murders? Why not just like be a fucking asshole? Why not be just like totally grandiose and selfish, right?
Yeah. Well, then that gets to this question of like, you know, why, of ethics, like why do we do anything good or bad? And I think that we have to have a different source of meaning, right? If we're not going to have a source of meaning that is about, you know, someone going through your record with you, or like St. Peter marking good or bad, you know, like going to heaven or hell or whatever the thing is, then you have to have a different source of why you should or shouldn't behave a certain way. And, you know, philosophers have been talking about this for thousands of years, like why should we do things or behave a certain way? And different people have come up with different, you know, different answers. Some say like, well, you know, you should do the greatest good for the greatest number of people, right? That's kind of a utilitarian view. You know, other people say like, well, there are certain things that are just wrong. You never should use another person as a means to an end, because that's just not how you should treat people, right? Or other people who say like, well, you know, you should try and like aspire to certain virtues because, you know, courage and honesty and whatever. We want to live in a world that has those things. And so we should all try and aspire to those virtues. And yeah, maybe different situations aren't cut and dry about how to do that, but we should all do our best to try, you know? But I do think that it comes down to like, well, what kind of world do you want to live in? You know, like, do you want to live in a world in which murder is an acceptable way of moving through the world?
Yeah, no. But apparently I live in that world to a certain degree.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, like, you know, when Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world.
I was thinking,
yeah. You're like, yeah, fine, Gandhi.
I mean, I was like on doom scrolling probably on TikTok earlier today. And it's like, TikTok is I mean, all the social media platforms are fucking ridiculous, but TikTok especially in that like, it shows you like real, sometimes live footage of what's happening in Gaza.
Oh man.
And then right afterwards, it's like a silly dancey video. Yeah. And so it's just like these traumatic images bumped up against these playful, funny cat video. Yeah. And it feels like I mean, you know, people are going to respond differently to that, but personally, I want to just like not fucking think about anything. It makes me feel like motivated to do something to try to make positive change in Gaza and free Palestine. And then it makes me want to just like throw my phone into the street.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah. I mean, that seems like the appropriate human emotional response, right? To seeing people suffer so badly. And I think that, yeah, I mean, it's a really kind of like cruel world that we live in, not only the atrocities that are happening to people, but the fact that I think our human brains are really not well suited to be able to understand the trauma of people across the world, right? Like we evolved in like 100-person tribes, right? Like you and me and these 120 people, like that's really all we can care about. And now we are caring about billions of people thousands of miles away, and we can't handle it, right? Like, of course we can't handle it. And we feel powerless because we kind of are. And I think that powerlessness is one of the like real heartbreaks of being alive, is that like we are so limited as humans. Like our ability to think about what could be or should be so far outstrips our ability to make that happen, especially when you live in a world like ours with all these complex systems. And so we are always living in this gap between what we imagine and what we care about and what we can actually do about it. And it's really painful to live in that space.
And that like powerlessness feels like it comes through in the caller's question, where it seems like she wants to figure something out, but why would she even try?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like, so do you see lots of folks in this position, like just go into depression and helplessness?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that like if you have this sense of powerlessness and there's this like, you know, just the trauma of it and the pain that people are experiencing, like it's so easy to just get to that point where like, well, none of it matters. Like, what am I even doing here?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I think there's like different ways of responding to that, right? Like one way is like, well, if you do a little bit and everybody does a little bit, then all of it together can add up to something. And I think like that's true, but I tend to not take that road because it may not add up to something. I mean, it really may not.
Yeah.
And yet I don't think that's reason enough not to do it. You know, I think it's just like, okay, well, you have a choice. You can either try and do what you can, your little minuscule part of what you can do, right? Your own little powerless human baby self that can only do so much. And you can try and figure out what that is and do that thing or not. Mm-hmm. And like go under the covers. Mm-hmm. That's kind of your two options. I mean...
Yeah, and you could go under the covers and be depressed, or you can go under the covers and be avoidant. Mm-hmm. Or go under the covers and create your own little world, and that makes you happy-ish.
Yeah. Well, and some people choose that, and like if that is, and sometimes people who are even active in the struggle like have to take time away to like, you know, recharge and restore and have their breaks, and I totally think that's important. But again, it's like, what kind of world do you want to live in? Mm-hmm. You know, do you want to live in a world in which everyone avoids what's happening and we all just like, you know, look at cat videos?
Which is completely understandable since we're getting like way too much stimulation or data or, you know, like we can't process all of this. So I get it. I want to validate that. But also there can be other ways that you can feel fulfilled and like you're making a change, I guess, even though you're not really making a fucking change.
Well, I mean, and the thing is that you never know.
Right.
Like, I mean, you know, I don't know when this will air, but like Biden just like, you know, stopped funding Israel because of all, I mean, in theory, because of all of the pushback politically that he's getting in the US. Maybe, you know, and if that's the story you want to tell and the meaning you want to make of all of those, what those people are doing. Right. And so you never know what's going to happen, you know? So it's like, you know, I have a friend who is an organizer and has said, you know, it matters how we go down. You know, like with the climate and everything, like we might be going down, but it matters how we go down. And I think that, you know, again, that mattering is not coming from the sky. It's not coming from some divine source. It's coming from us. We decide that it matters. And that, I think, is, you know, this caller, I would just say like, well, it matters if you say it matters, you know, and you get to tell the story about why it matters. And that story will change because you will change and you'll get new information. And, you know, Sartre says one of the things that we are free to do always is to change our story, right? We can't change our experiences, but we can change what they mean to us. And so we're incredibly creative creatures and we can always retell our stories and we can always imagine something new and we can always try to do what we can to make those things become real.
Who was the guy who wrote the book and the Holocaust?
Victor Frankl. Yeah. Man's Search for Meaning. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is someone who has like literally lived through what one may say is the worst thing that could ever happen to a human. And he said, you know, he said so many powerful things in that book, but, you know, he said the famous quote is like, in everything, there is a space between the stimulus and our response. And in that space is our freedom, you know, and that's exactly what Sartre said, is that we can't control what happens, but we get to control how we respond to what happens. And that is our human freedom, and that is where all of the meaning of our lives lies, I think.
I want to I feel like we should leave space for that in honor of it. Do you, when if you're talking to, if the caller is one of your clients, where do you meet her first?
Yeah. I mean, I think that sometimes clients come to me and they're just kind of beside themselves because they're just nothing matters. Right. And the end. And I think the first thing I do is just affirm, yes, nothing matters. And that's the beginning. It doesn't have to be the end. We can start from that premise. And I also want to say that for a lot of people, getting to this point where they say that nothing matters is actually it's an intellectual achievement, right? Because so much of us are we're just fed so much BS from the culture about what's supposed to matter to us. And then we say but that doesn't actually matter. Whatever makeup routine I'm supposed to have doesn't actually matter to me, or this capitalist structure doesn't actually matter. It's all made up. It's all meaningless. And it takes a certain amount of, evolution to get to the point where you can see that. Right. And so I don't, I want to honor that and say yes, that is true. There is growth that has to happen to get to this point, but it's not the end. It's not the end of the growth. Because I think if what happens is if you stay there, it's so easy to fall into cynicism and then to just say well, that's it, all done. I've done the thing. And so now I actually get to feel intellectually superior to all of you cows that are just doing whatever you think that, your cattle that you think you're supposed to do. And I know better. And I'm not buying it, and I'm going to go over here and get high and fuck y'all, right? Which is what a lot of teenagers do, when they reach that point in adolescence. And I think adults do a version of that as well, right? And so I think that it's important for us to understand that that's not the end of the journey. The end of the journey has to be a kind of creative process, right? Because I often think about, there's this allegory that Nietzsche told in one of his books, and he said the spirit changes. There's metamorphosis from camel, which is the animal that is the beast of burden that receives all of the cultural expectations just on its back, and it just carries all that shit. And then the camel transforms into the lion, and the lion is the great naysayer. And it just says, no, no, no. And it fights the dragon of the great thou shalt. And it says no to it. And that's the point, I think, where people get stuck. But then Nietzsche said, there is another change that needs to happen. And the lion must become the child. And he has this beautiful line where he says, I'm not going to get it quite right, but he says, the child is needed for the first turn of the wheel, the sacred yes. We need a sacred yes. And I think that there is a moment in which you look around and you say, well, none of it is real. None of it actually matters. But I am nevertheless going to say yes to something. I'm going to believe in something. I'm going to believe that I want to live in a world in which murder is not okay. Or I'm going to believe in a world in which, or a I don't know, theology or spirituality where there are Akashic records or whatever it is. You choose the view you want to have of the world, knowing that it could be right, it could be wrong. It's probably all just in your head, maybe not, I don't know, but you're going to go with it and you're going to say yes to it, not because it makes you right, but because that's what humans do. We create, we live, we have projects, we move forward. This is just what it means to be a human.
Isn't there maybe another option of instead of continuing being a human or human condition, can you hang out in that area and take a different turn and be I'm going to become enlightened and get out of my human ego and get out of all the hubbub, my personality, and find whatever, God or enlightenment, whatever that means. Like, no.
I mean, I don't know. I guess like in order to say I'm going to be enlightened, you have to have a certain conception of what that means. And you don't know if that conception's right or not. Like you're going to become enlightened, what, in like the Buddhist way?
Right, in like a Zen sort of, but then there you go.
Right.
Yeah.
It's everything is a framework and you don't know if any framework is right or not.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that over time, as I've done my own kind of spiritual growth, I have come to the conclusion that, yeah, like trying to get out of your own ego story self is probably helpful, no matter what ends up being true or not. But the more because that ego self, that's where all the stories lie, right? That's like the image that we have of ourselves. This is when we get really attached to the stories that we're telling. And if we can be less attached, I just think there's less suffering. It's like, I don't know that it makes you right. I just think it makes you hurt less.
Which is, pretty good motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems enough for me. I mean, most of us would agree that like hurting less is better than hurting more. And I think in the end, it's like, okay, well, if you've got your hand on a hot stove, if you take your hand off, like it hurts less, and it doesn't make you like a good person for taking your hand off the stove, or like the right kind of person or whatever. It just means you know what hurts and what doesn't.
Yeah, I get it. But your ego might be telling you that it's like less satisfying to take your hand off the stove because you're so justified in like being angry and being pissed off, and you should fucking do something about it. And that actually can create, motivation or energy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to like understate the role of emotions, right? Like our emotions are part of being alive too. And those are so often bound up with the stories that we tell, right? Like this person wronged me and they did this and they should deserve that, or like this is unjust and we need to do something about it. And like the stories that we tell, again, like in a way they don't matter, but they're all that matters, right? Because this is the world that we have created. And so it's like they're both true and not true. But they are certainly distinct from the physiological experience that you are having when you are angry. Right. And I think like in the same way that you can be with the dishes while you're washing the dishes, if you are just with the experience of your anger, to me, that is a way of engaging with humanity that is different than always telling a story about what your emotions mean, And I think that way of engaging with your own humanity does the thing of lessening your connection to your ego, which ultimately hurts less.
The sacred yes. By the way, it's Nietzsche, not Nietzsche. You sound like a fucking liberal elite. Tell all your philosophy friends.
Well,
Nietzsche.
It's also Sartre, not Sartre.
Do you say Van Gogh? Do you say it like that? You fucking asshole.
No, I don't.
Good. Thank God. Is the sacred yes supposed to be like you're saying yes to something like outside of the ego, outside of the conditioning that you've been conditioned your whole life? Like where do you, or is it just like you pick a fucking thing and become really, excited about it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Nietzsche actually says what the thing has to be.
Oh, okay.
Right. I mean, he has certain opinions about like, certain ways of being are better than others, he thinks. But it's like you just pick a thing, you believe in it and you go with it and know that you could revise it later and you could drop it. And he recommends like pick a thing that like feels empowering and powerful and doesn't, isn't like framed by resentment of other people and allows you to be creative and to revel in your creativity and feel strong and be strong and all of those things. But then also like the Nazis kind of took some of his work and and adapted it to their own purposes. So, this is the problem with stories.
Yes, the Nazis are the problem with stories. I agree. Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense to me.
I don't know. You seem to not like any of my answers here.
No. Do I? No, I don't typically like any of your answers. The Because I'm so attached to my story. I guess I've said yes to whatever fuck story I've come up with, and it feels so cozy in there.
Yeah.
And it feels like you're saying, tell me if I'm wrong here. It feels like you're saying, yes, okay, if you get to that point where you're like, what matters? First of all, congratulations, smarty pants. Look at you.
Yeah.
We're so proud of you. You're so smart. You're smarter than all the other fucking drones or, great. And then you get to this place of like, nothing matters, and you somehow kind of accept that in whatever way you can. And then you get to pick like what matters and try to be in alignment with what, feels good to you, empowering or creative or whatever, something that feels good. But know that like, it's all bullshit. Like probably all the way down is bullshit. Right.
Yeah. I'd say that's a good summary.
But my meaning that I've chosen to be 99% on board with is like, it's not bullshit all the way down. But you think you're so much fucking better than me. Is what I'm picking up. Yeah. That's the vibe that's coming from the other side of this table. Yeah. Why do you feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, like I said at the beginning, I don't know. I don't know that I'm right. You might totally be right. Like, I will die, and then my spirit guide, whom I have not...
Spirit guides.
Apparently,
who are very disappointed in you right now.
I've been ignoring
you're not
them.
believing them. Yes.
I know, yes.
But they know how to talk to dummies like you. Is the really actual, like, reassuring thing. Is that, like, they know you're a non-believer. And so they're like, this is fun. She's an idiot.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, I'm open to the possibility, right?
Are you?
I really am.
Okay.
I really am. Like, I'll talk to your psychic person. You should get both of us on here. We'll have a whole conversation. Yeah, I mean, I think I used to be someone who, like I said, I grew up evangelical, and then I went to college, and then it was like, none of that is real. Spirituality is all made up, right? And it's all just like material, physical world, and then like everything else is just like a complex way or a way of simplifying really complex systems, right? And I felt that way for a long time. But then like as an adult, I've had like some experiences that like have challenged that for me. And I think I'm in a position now where I'm much more open to the possibility of like, there are a lot of things we don't know, right? And like there's a lot of things that we don't see. And maybe the way that I'm operating is based on like kind of a limited perceptual field that maybe your psychic has a wider perceptual field, right? Sure. And she actually gets more information that gives her a different way of viewing the world. I think we all have different perceptual fields, and some of them are just more out there than others, or maybe divergent than others. And so we're all just kind of doing the best we got with what we see. But like also, I mean, 100 years ago, like if you had told someone that someday people are going to walk around with a little box in their pocket and they're going to be able to look at it and get any information that's ever been known about the world in a second, like you would be like, what are you talking about? Right? So like, what do I know?
Clearly nothing.
Yeah.
You proved me right. The most like annoying part of all this is that when I do die and I'm likely correct on what happens in spirit world, the bummer is that like you die, you go to spirit world, and you don't really have your ego anymore. It just sort of like diminish. It's not there anymore, So I'm not going to be able to be like, told you so, you fucking idiot. Like it won't be satisfying to make you feel bad. Yeah, there's no... But I really hope that I can somehow hang on to it just enough to make you feel like a fool.
Well, I'm sure that if you die before me and I receive some message from the beyond from you, it'll be that.
Yes, it will definitely be that. Yeah. Do you have any last words for our caller?
I mean, I think, like just to say yes. In the end, like it's hard to know that or to believe, whether it's true or not, that none of it matters. There's something deeply painful about that, especially when you really want to believe that what you're doing is important, you know? And I think that part of the desire to matter is really an ego desire, right? Like we want to matter, we want to be seen, we want to be known, and those are reasonable human things to want, but they are also very like egoic things to want. And you know, I think that like, I don't know that dogs go through the world really needing to matter, and they seem pretty happy, you know? And maybe we could learn a thing or two about, you know, what the good life is from that way of being.
Yeah.
I don't know.
My dog thinks that he matters and he's very fucking annoying about it. He's a broken dog. He just whines all the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have needs, certainly, but
they do.
That might be different, because that might be different than thinking you matter.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Like we all have needs. Maybe those needs just don't have to mean anything.
Let's leave it there. Thank you so much
for
talking to me. One more time, can you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, you can just come to my website, DanielleLaSusa.com, and find me there. You can sign up for my newsletter and hear all things from my mouth about about death and meaning and motherhood.
Yeah, we love it. Okay, I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Problems. Hey, okay. We like